Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady back. Of course, she is an incredible journalist, the host of the Megyn Kelly Show, which is on Sirius XM 111 every weekday at noon. She's also on YouTube, killing it over there. It's Megyn Kelly. Megyn, how are you? It's great to see you.
I'm great, Joe Pags. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. You know, we've got a lot in common as we've talked about. Capital Region of New York connections. We made our mark in journalism. We're both tall, attractive blondes. So I just was notified that Charlize Theron, is that how she says it? Charlize Theron is going to be playing me in a movie. They didn't contact me at all about this. You know, Megyn, I saw your video the other day. I couldn't believe it. They didn't talk to you before she played you in a movie, pretending to act and be and feel and emote as you would. They never contacted you?
She just took the book. She just took my book and made a movie out of it, which is why when people said, was the movie accurate? I was like, well, yeah, it was largely accurate because it was my stolen story.
Right.
There were certain things in there that were certainly made up. And I later found out that when they did the original screenings of the movie, a bunch of leftists were like, it makes MK look too good. And so they actually went back to the drawing board and put in scenes that would make me look bad, scenes that were not true. So it was annoying, but whatever. I mean, I have no problem with the movie overall. I think it actually has a good message in it. But what I was bitching about Charlize for was Glenn Close is out there ripping on JD Vance this week.
Makes no sense.
It's like, you know what? You got 3 nominations, a Golden Globe, an Oscar, a Screen Actors Guild for playing his Mama based on Hillbilly Elegy in that Ron Howard movie. Just be quiet. Can't you sit out any fights? Why do you have to dump on this particular guy? He's got enough incoming. You don't have to be one of them. But she can't. And the point I was making about Charlize was, so she makes this movie about Fox and she plays me. And then the entire press tour all she did was dump on me, Joe. All she did was say nasty things about me, judging when I came forward, whether I was late to the party and coming forward, how difficult it was to play a character like me. And she didn't mean it in terms of how complex I am.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, like, what's the point? Why did you agree to do this? Like, you've never even met me. You've never done me the courtesy of calling me, asking for my book, asking for my thoughts. You know, why don't you take the classy road? If you're going to do it, why don't you demur on left, baiters who don't like anybody who's of the right when they ask you nasty questions? It would be the classy thing to do, but that's not the route she went or Glenn Close went.
Well, I think what bothers me the most about it, and again, I'm not the subject of who Charlize Theron played, although I think she does want to play me. She didn't play you. She played what the public persona was. She played what only people saw on Fox or NBC or now that you're doing your show. She didn't play the real you. And the only way to do that is to know the real you. Now, she knows the real you from the book that you told us, all the story in the book, but that's not all you are. So to really play you, it's not sounding like you or trying to look like you. I didn't think she looked like you. But in doing that role, how can she possibly say I'm an honest actor who honestly try to portray somebody who's real and alive and still young and getting it done? But I never spent 1 second with her. That's the same thing with Glenn Close. I guess Mama was already gone, so she played her the best she could by the recollection of the family. But why now, as you said, dump? So could an actor really ever play Megyn Kelly without at least spending a minute with Megyn Kelly? I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I think her goal was just to portray me as an ice queen. And
Really?
I have that side. I mean, I have an icy side for sure. And I make no apologies for it, but that's not who I am. That's not all of who I am, nor was I looking for, I mean, I didn't know what they were going to do with that movie. As I said, I didn't have anything to do with it. So whatever. I mean, all I was happy for was that they told in general the story about what happened at Fox News accurately.
Right.
And what more can you ask for? But on the Glenn Close front, it's in a way, it's even worse because what she's saying in her attack on JD Vance, and it was just a tweet, it was just a post sort of saying my cat would bring a mouse's head to the bed of anybody who took a shot at cat ladies. But what she's saying is JD Vance doesn't like women. He said something sexist, misogynistic. I'm here in defense of the cat ladies. And honestly, first of all, the whole attack is just completely taking his remarks out of context. So put that to the side. She played the biggest, most important figure in JD Vance's life. And it was a woman. It was his mama. And she clearly has read Hillbilly Elegy, or at least heard the story because she starred in it, and knows that throughout JD's life, the strongest, most influential, most important people were all women.
Right.
His mama, his sister Lindsay, his Aunt Wee, then when he got to Yale Law School, Amy Chua. He met his wife Usha there, his wife Usha, who's helped him immensely. And you don't have to know much about JD to know all this. There actually haven't been a lot of very strong role models for JD that are men. The odds of this guy hating women, never mind strong women, are absolutely nil, which she knows, but she won't put that in a tweet or an Instagram post because she needs to curry favor with the leftists who make it possible for her to continue starring in movies. She's such an ingrate. It really made my blood boil.
It did, and what you said was masterful. That's why I brought it up. At the end of the day, you've got somebody in Glenn Close who probably didn't know how to use Twitter. I'm not denigrating her, but she's a Hollywood elite. She's somebody who's won big awards. She's somebody we've known about for a long time. Do you think that it was organic? Do you think somebody got in her and said, Glenn, you probably should separate yourself from this guy because what you did in that movie makes him look like a sympathetic character?
That's a good question. I do think that was her goal, is separating herself from him. But I don't know whether it was on the advice of an agent or whether it was just her sincere desire to have nothing to do with him. You know, since back then when Hillbilly Elegy was first made, JD was like a never Trumper. He was on CNN a lot. You know, he was not that political. So it was okay to like him as a Hollywood person. But now, of course, he's as political as they come. He's on the ticket with Trump. And so he must be, you have to distance yourself from him. And I'll bet you it was organic. I'll bet you Glenn Close got enough feedback where people were like, oh, can you believe you played his grandmother?
Yeah. That
she felt the need to stick a knife in him at the first opportunity she could.
At Megyn Kelly everywhere, MEGYN. Don't misspell it. What's wrong with you? Triton ratings came out today. Those watching and listening might not know what this is, but it's digital ratings. And there are 17.2 billion podcasts in America now. I don't know if you knew that. So you are number 10 now. You just rose to number 10. That's an immense step. Did you see that happening when you jumped into the podcast world and said, this is who I am, I'm going to name the show after me, and you're going to like it or you're going to hate it, and people love it, and they can't get enough of it. You've got millions of followers now on YouTube. We all follow you everywhere. So you made your own road. You're setting a groove that people are now, I think, starting to jump on as well. If Megyn's doing it, let me try that, because whatever she's doing is really working. But it's really working because you are who you are. You're who I've always known you to be, but you've taken all of that experience, all of that knowledge, all of that incredible ability as a journalist and as somebody who's not afraid to opine when she needs to, and to your mom's distress, you'll curse every once in a while. How do you feel about seeing these ratings go through the roof? The top 10 that's immense. I mean, you deserve it, but it happened fast.
Well, thank you. I have an amazing team behind me, and that's actually the key to my success, because my team of producers that I've had with me for years, I mean, my core producers that came with me from Fox, some went with me to NBC. So I've got a team of 6, and they are amazing. They get me my facts and they make sure that we don't embarrass ourselves. And that actually makes the difference between our show and some others that shall go nameless. But I did not know that whether anybody would have any interest in hearing from me after, I'd sort of been canceled by the left and then canceled by the right, not in that order.
Right.
Whether I'd have anybody who would want to hear from me at all. But I had to get off the couch and get back out there it was September of 2020, because our nation was losing its mind. All the bashing of cops was driving me insane. My brother's a cop, and the COVID overreach and the lockdowns with the school and the masking. It was like, I am incapable of sitting on my couch. I'd been licking my wounds after NBC for so long. I was like, maybe I'll just do nothing. Maybe I'll just do something. Maybe I'll hang my legal shingle back out. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right.
But then the world lost its mind, and I realized I've got to start speaking. And I said to my therapist, what if nobody listens? And he said, well, I'll listen. He's from South Africa. And Doug will listen. So you'll have to.
Yes.
And so, I just said to the team in the early days, just keep rowing, keep rowing, keep rowing. So now the best thing about, having an audience is it's some job security that we can keep doing what we love and putting the messaging out there. And I would be remiss if I didn't say a huge thank you to Sirius XM, because they came into my life a year into it and we were doing great, but they just gave me such a great platform and helped promote the show. And they support me so much technically. And they're just such a wonderful, lovely group of people that I love having a blue chip brand that I'm a partner with. And I can't say enough about those guys too.
Catch her every day, Monday through Friday. 111 is the channel on Sirius XM. It's Megyn Kelly, the Megyn Kelly Show. 12 p.m. Eastern time. Make sure you don't miss a second of it. You brought up the COVID madness and the lockdowns and all this lunacy. And I want to get into what you said about Tim Walz and you being a little afraid of him after you saw him speak in a second. But let's start with a piece of video that's come back from 2020 that I'm sure you've seen by now, where he literally had police going up and down neighborhood roads at the curfew time that he pulled out of his ass. and was threatening them to get inside, get off their porches. They're on their own front porch with their own family. Get inside the house now. Do it now. And at one point, some cop says, unload or let them have it or something like that. And they start shooting residents of Minnesota with paintballs to get them off their front porch during COVID because they weren't allowed to be outside in the open air. Megyn, what are we looking at here? We've got a guy that you and I probably didn't know as much about a week ago as we know now. I'm on in Minnesota. I've got, I think, 5 or 6 stations in Minnesota. The people seem very nice, too nice, to be honest with you. But when we see a guy become a tyrant and say, we're going to shoot you with a paintball if you don't get off your front porch, this guy should be the vice president. What did you think when you saw that video? I'm assuming that you saw it.
I haven't seen that video. This sounds
I'll send it to
horrifying.
you.
Okay, but right in line with what we have learned about Tim Walz in the first week out. And if this is what we learned in the first week out, I can't wait to see what we're going to know a month in, because people are going to start coming out of the woodwork. I agree with what you said. I love Minnesotans. My assistant of 15 years, Abigail Finan, is from Minnesota. She's Minnesota nice.
Right.
But there is a limit. Like at some point, you have to stand up to tyranny. And the COVID lockdowns were so ridiculous in Minnesota. It was all on him. The hotline to report your neighbors who aren't complying with Tim Walz made up orders.
Right.
But when it comes to social policy, too, he's been incredibly radical. You'd be hard pressed to find someone more to the left than Tim Walz. And I include in that Gavin Newsom.
Yes.
Originally I said he's Gavin Newsom with white hair. I think I was being unfair to Gavin Newsom. I think I would vote for Gavin Newsom before I voted for Tim Walz.
Wow.
He is as radical as they come. And every time you try to say, look what he did, you get PolitiFact or the left or whatever, some paper trying to fact check you saying, no, it can't be true. She's saying, you know what? Every time the attempts to fact check me have fallen through the floor because I am fact-based. I don't misstate things about the law. If I ever make a mistake, I'll come out and correct it. I haven't had to do that because he really did these policies. Yes. He really did make Minnesota a sanctuary state for people, for kids who want to chop off their body parts, whose parents say, no, honey, no, you're only depressed. We're not doing that. You need to not run to the doctor and sterilize yourself. Tim Walz said, come to Minnesota. I will give a court custody of you and you can have whatever you want done here. You can have the drugs that sterilize you. You can have the surgeries that sterilize you and that make sexual gratification an impossibility for you. These are 13-year-old kids.
Yeah,
you can cut off your breast so you can never breastfeed a baby. Come to Minnesota. We're the place for you. And they allowed this. Yeah. How is this not the lead on every news station in the discussion about Tim Walz?
It should be. I spent a lot of time in the Midwest. My wife was born in Michigan. A daughter was born in Michigan. We've got 5 daughters. One was born in Michigan. I was a TV news anchor there for 8 years in several markets in the state. Midwestern people are amazing, like you said about Abigail. They're an amazing set of people, but the problem is they're too nice. Like they just had an opportunity because they have open primaries there to get rid of Ilhan Omar, somebody who hates the country, someone who has said anti-Semitic things for years, somebody who said some people did something on 9/11 and said Congress is there to do the bidding of Somalia. This person could have been voted out. And when I opened this up for discussion on my show the other day, the people calling from Minneapolis, St. Paul said, yeah, but I really wanted to vote for the Republican that I wanted. No, you've got an open primary. You had an ability to get rid of this person and stop her from being in power in Congress, but they didn't. At some point, they've got to wake up in the Midwest and in other places that are just too nice and don't think they should take a stand. Like, you're really, really nice. You've always been nice to me. I'm afraid to ever get on your bad side because you will take a stand. And people should do what you do every day. Any comment about them not doing what they could have a couple of days ago and get rid of this woman from Congress? Minnesota nice is too nice, I think.
Well, I think, you know what too nice gets you? You're Canada. Minnesota's way up there. They're not too far from Canada. That's what happens to you. The Canadians are too nice, and now they have a 50-year-old man swimming with 12-year-old girls in the pool because he identifies as a prepubescent girl. Right. He goes by the name Melody Weishart, and he's changing in the girls' locker rooms, and Canadian nice is allowing it. The dads, the moms are allowing it.
Yeah.
He's now an official otter swimming with the 12-year-olds. That's what too nice gets you, Minnesota, and you're very close geographically and ideologically. You need sane people to say, there's nothing nice about playing into a child's delusion that will lead to self-harm. You know, I had a long talk over my years maturing with my great therapist, who I mentioned, and we talked about the nice thing. And I would say, I'm not nice, I'm kind. I'm a kind person. But I'm not nice just to say nice things just to make people feel better or feel good, because that's empty. It's empty calories and it's false, and people don't believe false compliments anyway. And I think one thing people have to understand is there's nothing mean about saying what's true. Meanness is when you say something with the intention of hurting someone.
Yeah.
That's your purpose, is to upset them. But just saying what's real is not mean. Boys cannot become girls. Girls cannot become boys. That is true. And if it upsets somebody, that doesn't make me mean. That may raise a trigger that you need to look into, but that doesn't make the statement mean. Minnesotans need to understand this. And you realize this is really the human rights issue of our time. Not that we need to pretend that this delusion is real, but that we need to rescue these children from this cult that keeps pulling them in and really hurting them. Frankly, I don't think we're going to be able to do it at the ballot box. I think we're going to have to do it with lawyers filing massive lawsuits, because that's the only thing that actually affects huge, massive, sweeping change in America. But I feel like Minnesota is far more radical than I knew prior to her naming Tim Walz. I used to think of it as kind of purple. I mean, it wasn't so long ago I was there in, Minneapolis, St. Paul for the Republican National Convention with John McCain and Sarah Palin. That was 2008. Why were the Republicans even considering Minnesota in play, right? Because it wasn't so far left that they thought it was ungettable. Well, now it clearly is. And this guy really is a wolf in sheep's clothing. What scared me about his first appearance and all the appearances thereafter, not in front of the media, of course, but in front of the rallies, has been he does seem very likable. He does have a down-home way of speaking. He drops the G's off of his words sometimes in a way that you're like, yeah, that's how I talk. He'll throw in a good damn here or there. And you're like, that's how I talk.
I saw your bit about the damn. He does a lot of damn, yeah.
Does a lot of damn. And so it scares me, because you could really find yourself liking this persona that's in your face. Like, seems like I wouldn't get any much drama out of him. And he reminds me of a bunch of guys I know who I like. But when you actually just take 20 minutes to Google his social policies and his COVID policies and what happened in Minneapolis the night of the protests, and how he let the 3rd precinct burn, the cop precinct burn.
He gave the okay.
You realize this is an actual wolf in sheep's clothing, and if you get too near the hungry wolf, you get eaten.
It is Sirius Triton, channel 111, Megyn Kelly, Monday through Friday at noon. Check her out on YouTube as well, at Megyn Kelly, everywhere on socials. Do you think they didn't properly vet him? It wasn't that hard for you and I to find out who this guy really was. And I think this guy is acting like he thinks a Midwesterner should be. He's actually from Nebraska, which is interesting. But he's almost overdoing the Midwestern nice. You don't think that they failed to vet him? You think that this was on purpose?
Yes, it was 100% on purpose. Have you looked at her record? The only one more radical than Tim Walz is Kamala Harris.
No, I agree with you on record. Well, let's do this.
I'll just say this. She was raised by Marxists. She's as far left as they come. She's been masquerading for the past month as a centrist Democrat, which she's not. She fell in love with this guy because he's her alter ego with white hair.
You and I agree on policy. What I mean about not vetting him is he certainly is lying about his military service. I had Tom Behrens on, who was the CSM that took that unit to Iraq. Behrens outs him as the liar that he is. He was never a CSM. He applied to retire after he found out. They got the warning letter. All of that, what he said about his service is a lie. He never carried weapons of war in war. That's a lie. He's also lying about his drunk driving arrest. I guess in 2008 or 2006 when he was running for Congress, they said that he had a hearing problem, so he wasn't drunk. He just had an equilibrium problem. He has since admitted he was going 96 and a 55. The guy's a liar. He's got a history of being a liar, track record of being a liar. When I say did they vet him properly, I don't mean on policy, because I agree with you 100% that on policy they're twinsies. But when it comes to who he really is, they could have gotten Josh Shapiro. I know they were afraid of the Palestine-Israel thing, but he would have been a whole lot better than this guy if you do the research on him.
Oh, Josh Shapiro. The problem with Josh Shapiro is he's so very Jewish and Shapiro-y. That's obviously why he didn't get it. We all know. I mean, that party's been taken over by radicals. That's why Ilhan Omar just won her primary. So unfortunately now a Jew cannot be a running mate in the Democrat Party. It's a sea change, and it's disgusting. So I don't think they cared about the Walz stolen valor stuff. They would have seen it because Tom Behrens, he came out years ago when Tim Walz first ran for governor in 18, and so did other members of their unit. So they knew. They didn't care. That these Democrats, the same ones who saw, 13 service personnel die and the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, the Taliban's today parading through the streets with $7 billion worth of our equipment. And this Democrat administration, Biden-Harris, is still saying it was stellar. It went perfectly. We're very proud of how it went. She's like, I was the last person in the room, but she loves it all. They don't care. They didn't care. So why would they care that he's guilty of stolen valor, as, maybe not in the classic term, but certainly in the ways you just described? That's not their thing. Being pro-military, understanding what might upset military families, that's not their thing, never has been. So for them, that wouldn't be a deal breaker. I think they were more obsessed with, he put tampons in the boys' room. He's so DEI friendly that he loved masks and mandatory vaccine programs and ratting out your neighbor. He's for me. That's how she was looking at it.
At Megyn Kelly everywhere. Check out her show every day, Monday through Friday at noon on 111 on Sirius XM. Megyn, I love your friendship. I'm just going to keep you for a couple of more minutes because it's always an honor to have you on. And thank you for always being kind to me. You've never been nice to me, but you've been kind, which is good. And coming on my show anytime I ask. What do you think is happening with the media? Even the idiot Jim Acosta, my word, not yours, who wrote a book while covering the White House instead of covering the White House correctly. He was making sound bites for his own book. He had the campaign guy from the Kamala Harris campaign on yesterday and literally almost had a journalistic moment, asking the guy over and over, are you going to do a press conference? Will you do a press conference this week? Will she take questions this week? Oh, by the end of the month, we're going to do one. So, Megyn, it'll be a month and a half since we've been shoved down our throats that she's the nominee before she takes any questions, if in fact she does one before the end of August. That's nuts. Is the media getting scared that it's gonna show its bare rear end as not being journalistic at all if they don't keep on sort of going on this line? More and more of these so-called journalists are saying, you got to answer some questions. Why aren't you sitting down? Are they covering their own butts, or are they really getting frustrated that they can't talk to this woman?
I think most of them are fine with her plan.
Really?
What they really want is to see her get reelected. That's more important. Trump is
the
an
acting
existential threat. I mean, they're just starting to maintain some semblance of credibility, but they don't really want her to do anything that's going to undermine her chances. That's the truth. They're fine with being her PR lapdogs in the back of the plane or the bus. And we know that because that's exactly what they've been. I mean, I can only imagine if I were at Fox right now and our reporters were out following a campaign that refused to speak to the press, the order would eventually have come down from Roger Ailes saying, we are now leaving the bus. We are not going to report anything we see on the campaign trail until they actually speak with it, because we don't get paid to do PR.
Right.
That's not our job. We don't just keep writing up her laudatory things she says about herself and her policies and putting that to print. And that's what they're doing, because the sin is multifold. A, they write down whatever she does in a way that is, fawning and as if it's news that she said this to this rally or that. But then B, they do no fact checking of her, none. And C, they support the lie. They support like, oh, she came up with this great idea on tips. Oh, what a wonderful policy.
Yeah.
You've seen the tweet online comparing the CBS tweet when she said it, like, oh, she's got this great idea, versus when Trump originally said it was his idea, like, it's going to cost us billions in taxes. Oh, wow. So, I mean, The media is, of course, they want her to win. I do think at some point, and not yet, because they wanted to get as close to early voting as possible, they'll rattle the saber a little more. But I really think the main thing to remember on the side of sanity is don't get too hung up on this, because when she gives her interview, it will go well. She's not going to sit with somebody who won't make sure it goes well.
Right.
And then it will be like, she did an interview. And they'll all be like, stop, she did an interview. Like, that's enough. And I just don't think the Republicans or Trump need to have too many eggs in that basket, because I think she'll do decent at the debate. I think she'll do decent in this interview that she's eventually going to give. And she's going to have to be beaten by the Republican messaging about her by bringing up her 19 comments or 20 comments for job performance in the Trump White House. I don't think that they can rely on her and the media to cause a stumble that's great enough to affect the election.
Well, I think that you're spot on, and here's why I say that. A, because you normally are, and B, she's out there complaining about Trump this and Trump that and Trump the other. Trump is calling her stupid, going after her personality, and she's going to be able to get rid of all of that and play the victim when she does do this sit down. So I think you're right. They're carefully selecting it. But here's something that jumps out at me. When she was on the tarmac the other day, and she said, my team is working on it as far as a sit down interview before the end of the month. Megyn, if you or I were in any newsroom anywhere in America or on planet Earth, and the vice president and the presumptive nominee for the Democrat Party called us during the newscast and said, "Can I come on right now?" we would both say, "Absolutely, let's do it." So working it out, and my team is working on it, it's all BS. She's lying. Do they assume that the American public don't know, as we know, that we would drop everything to go and interview her if we had that opportunity? Are they buying the fact that they're working on it? Is that enough?
No one cares about all the crazy things we just discussed about Tim Walz. No one cares that she's for getting rid of private health insurance. No one cares that she wants to ban fracking. No one cares that she wants to ban meat. No one cares. The Republican voters who care about that are already voting for Trump.
Yes.
The Democrat voters who are voting for her couldn't care less about that. The independents who have suddenly flocked to Kamala Harris don't care about those things either. They're sick of Trump. They want somebody younger. They're not afraid of Democrats. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be independents.
Wow.
So they're banking on no one caring. They just don't give a damn about whether she's going to sit with anybody. They too are like the core voters who they have and think they can get are like, that's a media problem. I don't know how Trump is going to win this election. I think it has to just be hammering over and over who she is and what he's going to do.
Okay.
He's lost the message discipline of 16. It's regainable. He can recapture it. China, manufacturing jobs. The wall, build the wall, build the wall, build the wall. He's not doing that. He's not doing that this time. And I don't know if the rally model is working. It's not penetrating. The earned media coverage he got every day and every week of the 2016 election cycle is gone. Yeah. He's not president anymore, so they don't have to give him the media coverage that he even got in 20. We need something else. And it has to be what he's going to do for the American people, not in, with all due respect to the Elon interview, which was interesting, but Trump was pretty rambly on it. It's got to be short, classic Trumpian sound bites said over and over and over again so people understand what he is going to do for them. It can't be bitching and moaning about her press and interaction with the press. None of it's going to penetrate.
Well, I think he's got to stay away from the race stuff as well. He's got to stay away from calling her stupid because that turns people off. The people that I've spoken with, and you've heard this as well in a larger stage than I have, they want policy talk just like you just said. They don't want the personality stuff because he probably isn't going to win that. She's way more sympathetic than Joe Biden has ever been. One last thing with Megyn Kelly. Go and check her out at 111 on Sirius XM. Thank you for all the time. I'm going to make 2 beautiful segments out of this. Thank you for doing it. Let me just play that piece of video that I showed you before we started today. And tell me if you think that Kamala Harris can somehow walk away from this. Trump is letting her. I think the right in general is letting her, but she is complicit in this.
The reason I say it is not to make a political point about them, not if they've gotten their lesson, but guess what? They want to, the guy we're running against, what's his name? Donald Dump or Donald, whatever.
I mean, the people behind him don't even know what he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's. This is just today, Megyn. Joe Biden has been gone since the day he took office, and Kamala Harris, the second in command, has to have been complicit, or she's not very smart. Can she walk away from the fact that she has been helping to hide this cognitive disaster for 3.5 years?
I love how the people behind him with those signs are like.
They totally were. They didn't want to be there. Yeah.
No. Look, I think that message that she hid it and she was complicit is very effective and that rational people know that's true. But they've known that for a month and they haven't held it against her. Her poll numbers have only soared. And it's not like that's a message we need to get out. Everybody knows that everybody around him hid his cognitive infirmity. It doesn't appear to be relevant because her poll numbers are surging in a way that's alarming. So I don't see that as the promised land. I like it. It works for me, but it doesn't seem to be working out there with the real people. I think it really has to get back to, like, Trump needs to. I heard this, excuse me, Peter Navarro suggested it, subbing for Steve Bannon on War Room.
Right.
And he's as Trumpy as they come. And he was saying Trump needs to do an interactive presentation with those big screens, those jumbotrons at his rallies, where he plays something she says, and then he explains why it's false or what he's going to do differently. Like, that could actually make the news. But he needs to do the same thing over and 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 over everywhere he goes. right? And he can inject his brand of humor, but not ramble. I feel like he can pick your top three moments where you want to veer off script, and they can only be 2 minutes long. And when this red light goes on, you've gone on too long. Somebody needs to be able to tell him, we love you, but you're rambling. It's not resonating. People are leaving the rallies and people are leaving the voting booths because your numbers are going down, but it's early. You've got time. You don't have a ton of time, but you still have time. We're still in August. All right. It's not October.
Right.
And so somebody needs to really be somebody who loves him, somebody who he trusts, somebody like Don Jr., somebody like Eric needs to sit down and say, Dad, love you. You can get this done, but you must listen to somebody else right now. Because I do think like the repetitive messaging that the press is forced to cover, if he just says nothing other than the economy and immigration, the economy and immigration, the economy and immigration, that could work. He's got to drag them kicking and screaming to his messaging, and he has to be clever about it because they're not covering the rallies. In 2016, when I was at Fox, they were all putting the rallies on air. It was like crack.
Yeah.
It was like, stepping in the crack because they tuned in. You'd watch your ratings show and be like, oh, we're talking about Trump and the ratings are high. And then the actual Trump would come on a rally and they'd be like, off the charts. We never actually put the Trump rallies on my show because I recognize this is not going to be fair to Hillary Clinton because we're certainly not going to put 2 hours of her on our show.
Right.
We would take clips and we would do it fairly. But the vast majority of others, certainly at CNN and MSNBC, who had ratings in the basement, would take it. And they would put it on. No longer. No one is airing the Trump rallies. They're barely covering even his controversies that he's generating. And so he's clever and he knows a lot more about how to get elected than you or I do. So he's got to think about how exactly to reclaim the news cycle. And I believe he can do it.
Yeah, I think so too. It is Megyn Kelly. Go check out the Megyn Kelly Show, youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, Megyn. Spell it right. What's wrong with you? Check out the Megyn Kelly Show also on Sirius XM, Monday through Friday at noon on Channel 111. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for the hard work that you do for this country. And let me say this. I'm not kissing up. This is the truth. I say this on my show even when you can't hear it. I don't listen to any talk radio, and I don't watch any podcasts except for yours. Yours is the only one that I watch because I know I'm going to get the straight skinny and I'm going to learn from it, whereas others are just pushing their opinion on me all the time. So thank you for being so amazing. And number 10 is just the start. You're going to be number 1 very soon. Thank you, Megyn.
Oh, I love that, Joe. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're the best. Let's talk again soon. We're back after this. Stay right here.